Welcome back. Tonight's story is about a woman who watched her twin sister steal her name, her credit, and a house in a town she had never lived in, smiled through 2 years of family dinners, and then made sure a single foreclosure notice landed on their mother's Christmas table. Pour the coffee. Stay close. My twin sister stole my identity for a mortgage, so I made sure the foreclosure notice arrived at Christmas. My name is Hannah Delacroix Mercer. I am 38 years old. I live in a small brick house on the east side of Tulsa, 2 blocks from a bakery that smells like burnt sugar every morning at 6. I work as a fraud investigator for a regional bank. I read patterns for a living. Numbers that do not match. Addresses that repeat. Names spelled almost right. 2 years ago, on a Tuesday in February, I pulled a routine duplicate SSN report at my desk. My own social security number came back attached to a mortgage in Bentonville, Arkansas. A house I had never seen. A loan I had never signed. The borrower listed on the file was Hannah D. Mercer. Same spelling, same birthday. Different signature. Different phone number. Different everything except the 9 digits the federal government had given me when I was 4 minutes old. I sat at my desk for a long time. I could smell the cheap coffee from the break room and hear the hum of the printer behind me. My hands were cold. I did not call anyone. I did not cry. I opened a new folder on my work drive, and I named it after the month, and I started to build. The thing about twins is that the person who knows how to ruin you is the same person who knows how to find you in the dark. If your gut already tells you who took the loan out, tell me in the comments. I want to see how many of us saw it from a mile away. We grew up in a yellow house on a quiet street in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. From the curb, it looked like the kind of family you put on a church bulletin. White trim, a porch swing that creaked, a wreath on the door every season, even in July. Our mother, Marlene, ran a small interior design business out of the sunroom and had opinions about everyone's drapes. Our father, Wade, sold farm insurance and laughed too loud at his own jokes. And then there were the two of us, Hannah and Heather. Identical down to the freckle under the left eye. People always said we were lucky. Built-in best friend, built-in roommate, built-in maid of honour. They said it the way people say things they have never had to live inside of. Heather was 4 minutes younger and spent her whole life acting like those 4 minutes were a debt I owed her. If I got a doll for my birthday, hers had to be bigger. If I won a spelling bee, she got the migraine that ruined the trip to the regional. She learned early that crying louder than me got her what she wanted. Our mother called it sensitivity. Our father called it spirit. I called it the warning sign nobody else wanted to read. The cereal in our pantry was always the cheap kind, in the brown bag that tasted like cardboard, with a little sugar dust on top. The garage smelled like motor oil, and the menthol cigarettes our father pretended he had quit. The kitchen clock above the stove ticked too loud, and every Sunday at noon, our mother would say the same sentence while she set the table. Family is the only thing you cannot replace. She said it like a blessing. She said it like a leash. When we were 9, Heather took my school picture out of the frame in the living room and replaced it with a copy of her own. Same uniform, same background, same smile. Our mother did not notice for almost a year. When I finally pointed at the wall and said, "That is not me," my mother squinted at the photo, then at my face, and said, "Oh, honey, what does it matter? You look the same anyway." Heather smiled into her cereal bowl. One learned the first lesson that day. In our house, my face was not mine. It was shared property. When we were 16, Heather forged my signature on a permission slip so she could go on a band trip I had not been invited to. The teacher caught it because I do not loop my Y the way she does. I got called into the office. Heather sat next to me and cried so hard the counsellor brought her a tissue box and forgot I was in the room. Our parents grounded me for a week for, and I quote, letting her use me. I did not understand what that sentence meant until I was a grown woman with a folder on my work drive. That night, I lay on my twin bed under a glow-in-the-dark star our father had stuck to the ceiling crooked, and I listened to Heather hum in the next room. And I understood, in the quiet way a child understands things she cannot yet say, that I was going to spend my whole life cleaning up after a girl who wore my face on purpose. The triggering incident, the one that started the file, came on a Tuesday in February 2 years ago. A duplicate Social Security usage flag. I told you about the moment at my desk. What I did not tell you yet is what I did that night when I got home. I poured a glass of wine I did not drink. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, and I pulled the address on the mortgage. Bentonville, Arkansas. A 4-bedroom on a cul-de-sac with a fake stone facade and a basketball hoop in the driveway. I pulled the property records. The deed was in my name. The taxes were behind. The HOA had filed 2 complaints. I pulled the loan origination file through a back channel I am not going to name on a recording. The income on the application was listed as $72,000 a year, employed as a freelance graphic designer. My sister Heather has been a freelance graphic designer since she dropped out of community college at 20. The signature on the closing documents was a careful, looping imitation of mine. She had practiced. For weeks, maybe. I could see the hesitation in the H. I could see the place where her hand had paused and started again. I did not call her. I did not call our mother. I went to Thanksgiving that year, and I passed the green beans, and I smiled when our father said grace. Heather sat across from me, wearing a sweater I had given her 2 Christmases before. She asked me how work was going. I said, busy season, you know how it is. She said, I do not know how you do that job. All those numbers would put me to sleep. Our mother laughed. Our father refilled his glass. And the folder on my work drive grew by another 47 pages that week. If you have ever had a sibling turn your own name into a weapon, drop a 1 in the comments. I want to know I am not the only one who learned to smile through it. The slow part of this story is the part nobody films. For almost 2 years, I built a case the way you build a stone wall, one piece at a time. I pulled every credit inquiry made under my SSN, going back 4 years. There were 9 of them. 2 auto loans in Missouri, a store card in Texas, a personal loan from an online lender out of Utah, and the mortgage in Bentonville, which was the biggest fish in a pond I had not known existed. I drove to Bentonville one weekend in April. I parked across the street from the cul-de-sac house, and I sat in my car for an hour and a half. I watched a woman who had my face carry grocery bags from a white SUV to a front door painted the same shade of navy our mother had painted ours when we were 12. A little boy ran out behind her. He looked about 6. He had Heather's chin and a stranger's eyes. I did not know she had a child. Our mother had never mentioned it. Heather had cut contact with the family 18 months before, on and off, the way she always did when she needed room to do something she did not want witnessed. I drove home that night, and I cried once, in a gas station parking lot outside Fayetteville, for exactly 4 minutes. Then I wiped my face, and I bought a coffee, and I kept driving. The folder grew. I want to tell you about the moment the case became a weapon instead of a wound. It was a Wednesday in September. I was at my desk when an email came through from the loan servicer on the Bentonville property. The borrower had missed her 4th payment. A notice of default was being prepared. The foreclosure timeline was beginning. Standard process. 90 to 120 days to cure, then a public filing, then a sale date. I did the math. I did it twice. If the default notice posted on its standard cycle, the certified mail receipt confirmation would land in the borrower's listed mailing address somewhere in the 3rd week of December. The borrower's listed mailing address, the one Heather had used on the application for backup correspondence, was not the Bentonville house. It was our parents' yellow house on the quiet street in Broken Arrow. She had used our mother's address as a safety net. She had used the woman who raised us as a forwarding service for a crime she committed with my name. I closed my laptop. I walked to the break room. I poured a cup of coffee I did not drink. And I understood, in the same quiet way I had understood at 9, that I was not going to stop this letter. I was going to make sure it arrived on the right day. The kind stranger in this story is a woman named Bernadette Alvarez. She is a senior compliance officer at the bank, 2 floors up from me. 61 years old, silver bob, reading glasses on a beaded chain. She has been doing this work since before I was born. I went to her office in October, and I closed the door behind me. I told her everything. I showed her the folder. She listened without interrupting. When I was done, she took her glasses off and set them on the desk. She said, "Hannah, you have built a clean case. You have not touched a single record you were not authorized to touch. You have not contacted the suspect. You have not tipped the family. You have done this the right way." Then she said the sentence that broke something open in me. She said, "But you are allowed to be a person about this too. Not just an investigator, a person." I did not know what to say, so she said it for me. She said, "File the report through the proper channel. Hand it to the fraud unit at the servicer. Hand it to the Bentonville police. Hand it to the US Attorney's office if it gets that far. That is your job. But the timing of when a piece of certified mail goes out," she said, "is not something you control. It goes out when it goes out. And if it happens to arrive on a day when the family is gathered, well, that is not your doing. That is the calendar." She put her glasses back on. She said, "Go have a good Christmas, honey." I did. If this story is starting to feel familiar, take a breath with me. I know this part is heavy. If you have a sister who wore your name like a coat she did not own, tell me in the comments. I read every single one. After Bernadette, I went home, and I lived a life. I had built a quiet one on purpose, a small brick house, a garden in the back with tomatoes that never ripened right, a man named Dawit Okonkwo who taught middle school science and who knocked before he came into a room, even after 4 years together, a rescue beagle named Pepper who slept on my feet, fresh sheets on Sundays, a sketchbook on the kitchen counter where I drew houses I would never build. I had changed my middle name to Delacroix when I was 26, after my grandmother on my father's side, the only woman in that family who had ever looked at me and seen me, and not Heather. I had not told Dawit about the file. I told him in October, the night after I sat in Bernadette's office. He listened the way he listens to everything. Then he said, "Do you want me to come with you to Christmas?" I said no. He said, "Do you want me to be at home when you get back?" I said yes. He said, "Then I will be at home when you get back." That was the whole conversation. That is what a good man sounds like. I filed the formal fraud report in the first week of November. The servicer opened an internal investigation. The Bentonville police took a statement. The default notice went out on its standard cycle: certified mail, return receipt requested, addressed to Hannah D. Mercer at our parents' yellow house in Broken Arrow. The post office tracking site told me it was scheduled for delivery on December 23rd. Christmas Eve dinner at our mother's house starts at 6. The mail carrier on that route comes between 2 and 4 in the afternoon. I drove down from Tulsa on the morning of the 24th. I bought a green bean casserole nobody was going to eat, and a wrapped candle for our mother, and a small wooden train for the nephew I had only ever seen from across a street. Heather was already there when I arrived. She hugged me at the door. She smelled like the same perfume she had stolen from my dresser when we were 19. She said, "I am so glad you came." I said, "Me too." The certified mail slip was sitting on the entry table next to a bowl of cinnamon potpourri. Our mother had not opened it yet. She had set it aside, the way she set aside anything that looked like it might be work. I saw it the second I walked in. I did not look at it again. We ate. Our father said grace and laughed too loud. Heather talked about a freelance project that did not exist. Our mother served pie. At 7:45, after the dishes were cleared, our mother sat down in her chair by the tree with a cup of coffee and started opening the day's mail. The Christmas cards first, then the bills, then the certified slip. She read it twice. I watched her face change in the slow way a wall changes when a crack travels through it. She looked up at me. She looked at Heather. She said, "What is this?" Heather said, "What is what?" Our mother handed her the notice. I want to be very clear about what happened next, because this is the part I have told nobody until tonight. I did not raise my voice. I did not stand up. I sat in the chair I had sat in for 38 Christmases. I said, "That is a notice of default on a mortgage in Bentonville, Arkansas. It was taken out in my name using my social security number 2 years ago. The signature is forged. The borrower listed on the loan is sitting on the couch across from you in the red sweater." Heather said my name. Just my name. Hannah? Like a question. Like a plea. Like the word our mother had used at the kitchen table when we were 9, and she had said, "Oh, honey, what does it matter? You look the same anyway." I said, "It matters." That was the callback. 2 words. I had been waiting 29 years to say them in that room. I reached into my bag and I pulled out the folder. Not the work drive. A printed copy. Tabbed. Indexed. Highlighted. I set it on the coffee table between the pie plates and the potpourri. I said, "The fraud report has been filed. The Bentonville police have a statement. The servicer has opened a case. There is a federal referral pending. I am not here to negotiate. I am not here to forgive. I am here because the woman who raised us deserved to find out from me, in this house, before she found out from a stranger on a phone call." Our father said, "Now, Hannah." Our mother said nothing. Heather started to cry. Real tears this time, not the kind she had practiced in the principal's office at 16. I did not feel anything about it. That is the part that surprised me. I had spent 2 years bracing for a feeling that never came. I stood up. I put on my coat. I said, "The casserole is in the kitchen. The candle is on the table. The train is for the little boy. Tell him his aunt says hello." I walked to the door. Our mother said my name once, softly. Marlene's voice, smaller than I had ever heard it. I turned around. I said, "Family is the only thing you cannot replace. You taught me that. I am keeping the one I built." And I walked out. If you have stayed with me all the way to this porch, thank you. Tell me in the comments which line landed the hardest. I want to know which one you are going to carry into your own kitchen. I drove the turnpike back to Tulsa with the radio off. Snow had started somewhere outside Sepulpa. The wipers ticked like the kitchen clock above our mother's stove. And somewhere around mile marker 220, I started talking to the 9-year-old girl who had stood in the living room, pointing at a photograph on the wall. I told her, "Your face was always yours." I told her, "The woman who could not tell you apart from your sister was not seeing badly. She was choosing not to see." I told her, "You were not too much, and you were not too little, and you were not interchangeable with anybody." I told her, "The quiet you learned in that house was not weakness. It was the room you were building inside yourself for the day you would need to stand up and say 2 words in a living room and mean them all the way down." I told her, "You are going home now. There is a man there who knocks before he opens a door. There is a dog who sleeps on your feet. There are fresh sheets on the bed because it is Sunday tomorrow. The yellow house is behind you. The folder is closed." I told her, being unwanted by people who could not see you was never the same as being unworthy of being seen. And then I drove the rest of the way home in the quiet, with my own name, finally, on every piece of paper that mattered.